Is your end of day market video for the 14th of October. How's everybody doing today? This was another wild one. Look at the performance from the open. I think that's kind of the best way to kind of start from today, and then we'll talk a little bit about just what happened today, and where I think like some of the themes are in this market, and where it's really impressive what this market is doing in terms of some of these areas that are showing relative strength and showing performance. So first of all, we kind of woke up to this morning the escalation with China. They said today that they're what are they restricting imports today? Where's the exact headline if I have it here? I believe it that they're restricting. Oh, geez, what did I do with the headline? Or sanctions on was it a South Korea vessel that that the U.S. uses. In any event, it's another escalation that's happening now. Yeah, hits back on U.S. on shipping with Hawa probe. So remember what I said the other day, and I think overall you just kind of have to be careful with what kind of information that you're getting from social media. There's a lot of good information from it, but there's also a lot of poor information. There was a big post that I saw over the weekend about how this whole thing was a misunderstanding between Trump and Xi. Well, that's incorrect. And the funny thing is, I saw a lot of people take to that and say, "Yeah, that's right. It was all a misunderstanding about what's going on." It's not a misunderstanding, guys. There's really these guys are going back and forth, and we don't really know what's going on. Trump and Xi are supposed to be meeting towards the end of the month. I think it's actually on the 31st of the month. Now we don't know, number one, if that meeting's going to happen. Number two, the way that they're going back and forth, we don't know if they're what my thought was that they're playing hardball, but and that could also be it, or they're just kind of preparing to getting more entrenched into what's going on with being very protective about AI, being very protective about semiconductors and chips, and very protective about resources. You don't know if that is going to be resolved. It's almost like an economic war that's going on. But make no mistake, there's no misunderstanding. I mean, this is real stuff. So we're gonna have to unfortunately live with these headlines until we get closer until the meeting between these two, and hopefully it doesn't. If you are more bullishly positioned, you don't want to see this escalate into a full economic war that gets heightened, right? Because we know what's going to happen with that. The volatility is going to increase, and there's a lot of things that still need to take place. A lot of companies use China as a trading partner. So, without getting any more into the specifics of that, I want to go into the price action. But really, the point is, you have to be careful about. Hey, just because someone says something confidently, think about it. You don't need to necessarily use AI, which a lot of people are doing, for answers. Like, AI is great for resources and getting facts and getting particular things, but you still want to go through and analyze things, right? And that's all part of being a trader too, is to get information, right? Process the information, think through, problem solve, and be clever with what you're doing. But don't take just because someone says something that answer is correct. So in any event, I'm going to move on from that. But again, I think these little lessons in trading are very important, because at the end of the day, you have to figure out how you're going to position your portfolio and what you're going to do, and take observations from the price action. So let's talk a little bit about that, the observations for the price action. I started to mention about where we kind of opened for the day. What I thought was pretty unusual for the day is how washed out we were on the open. The tick index, which is something that I look at throughout the day and just kind of keep one eye on for extremes, hit like a negative 1,100 ticks this morning. That is usually when we're over 1,000. I classify that as extreme, whether it's to the upside or to the downside. Now, we also hit in the middle of the day. So we had a extreme tick in the morning. We also had the breadth go extreme in the morning too. It was a plus 16 upside volume. That is a horrible, horrible reading in breadth. Now, if that wasn't coupled with the tick index, I would say, geez, we're going to have a really rough day. But I kind of just said, hey, let's see what happens. And one of the things that I thought was pretty unusual for the day, and I'm going to go back, I'm going to flip back here to the charts just to replace this. But what do I have this up here? Replace with the there we go. Sorry for the delay with this, but you know, if you look at what the S&P did today, right on the open, a leg lower, right? If you look at what the Qs did for the day, right, leg lower on the open. What stood out to me was what happened with IWM today. IWM did not take that leg lower on the open, and look at what IWM did today. And I have to see if this is still a new closing high just by by a hair. But and by the way, here's where the breadth at the bottom right of your screen, and you may not be able to read this, but the NYSE volume, it's one of the biggest flips that I've seen in a long time. Being it was, and again, like maybe I have stats on this, and if so you could kind of see on the bottom of the screen, this looks at overall up volume versus down volume. Here's what I was referring to. This was a negative six, not a negative. This was a 16 on the open. Look at where it finished for the day. 60 plus 68. That is a huge buy the dip after a washout in the first 15 minutes. All right, I'm going to get rid of this because you don't need to see that anymore. Whoops, get rid of that. All right, let's go back. And that's overall market, by the way. What I'm talking about is for that up versus down volume, right? That's overall market. So just by a hair, the small caps closed at a new high today. Very impressive to see what they did today, up 1.4%. And then look at what the microcaps did today. They were up 2.3% today. So you look at this and you say, geez, this is pretty darn bullish. If you see something like the microcaps closing at an all-time high, as well as the small caps, albeit by a small amount, closing at an all-time high today. Very different than what SPY, and I'm going to go back to the daily charts here, but look at SPY, and sometimes this is what, in my opinion, this is what happens after you have a big down day. Is you have a little, like, you have some tremors after this, meaning I think it's rare to go right back to the new highs. I think you have to back and fill a little bit. And I think that's what we're kind of going through with the overall SPY, with the overall market, the S&P 500, which is still below the 20-day moving average, still below the 20-day and the 5-day moving average, but inside value still for the month. Also, when you look at the Qs, and I probably tweeted this out about 5 times over the last 2 days, but we can't, for now, Qs is having trouble getting through that top of the value area. You're going to see this, and I went over this in yesterday's video too. Think about, selling some, putting on some covered calls, or selling some upside, some upside protection, like selling a call spread, because we're for the Qs, they cannot get through this level 603.21. We did this yesterday, and we also did this today. Look at how many, these are 1 hour candles. Look at how many 1 hour candles could not get through this. So that's a barrier for now. It's a barrier that can't get through. And I think when you look at, now we're just talking about the indices, but I think when you talk about individual stocks, you're going to see this. And I think, let's see if I can bring up a couple spreadsheets here, right? So replace with this, right? This is, I have a spreadsheet for the Mag 7 names, or Great 8 as I call them. Look at what's going on here, right? So NVIDIA was down 4.4% today, right? That's a big move down. And again, I think that was a headline about Oracle using AMD chips, but you look at the rest of these names, they just don't look like they want to go anywhere yet. My theory, and I could be wrong, is that they're probably going to wait for earnings to see what these names are going to do. But overall, they just look like they're being more of a source of funds for anything else, right? People are probably, still overweight these names, and they're probably taking out some of their investment in some of these names and going to other places. I still think Tesla is the best place to be because of what we're seeing in the alternative energy market, which I'm going to get to in just a minute. But other than that, I think most of these names, they just look too tired to me. And I'm not going to go over all the charts. I did that for members in the weekend video. Um, just kind of bring up as well. This is the watch list that I brought up yesterday. Um, I didn't really add any major names to this, even though I probably could add about 10 different small cap names. But you can kind of see what's going on here. You can kind of see that small cap semis, for example, are doing extremely well right now. Large cap semis are not doing so well. And I actually sold one of my positions today. Let me switch the spreadsheet here. So just bear with me a second as I fiddle around here. But you could see where did the semis finish today? All the way down here. The semis finished down 1.8%. But if there was a lot of semis that had some strong momentum to them, but they were not your large cap names. So let me go over a couple things here via chart. Replace. Sorry, this is just the software that I'm using. It's and I use one big screen for one of my computers. I have another computers where I have two separate screens, and it doesn't allow me to share a particular window. It's a bad software system. But take for example, I got out of Broadcom today. I've been holding Broadcom for I don't know, about like over a month. Why did I get out of Broadcom today? Even though I think it's one of the best semiconductors out there, because it just seems tired. It's getting good news and it's not going up on good news. They announced a partnership with OpenAI. They didn't have the same reaction as AMD had. Right? It just seems like some of these names are just tired up here. Take a look at what ALAB did today. Complete breakdown on no news. 19%. I have heard this nonsense, by the way, which I'm not going to go off on another tangent because I don't want to make the video too long. But I've heard people say, ALAB, oh, it's a liquid leader. No, it's not. Stop doing that. Stop calling things liquid leaders, right? And thinking that you're getting that there's a warm and fuzzy feeling when you call something a liquid leader, right? All the names in the S&P 500 are liquid names. Stop calling them liquid leaders, right? It's a very bad term to have, in my opinion. Um, you're making it sound to get comfortable in these names. They're not. Look at this name, down 19% today, and there was no news on this name, at least that I saw. I didn't see any particular news on this. Look at CRDO. You think this is a liquid leader too? Down 13% on no news, right? They're not. When liquidity is there at times, and liquidity is not there in other times, right? And you just have to be aware of that, especially in growth names, right? It can vanish. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. But again, I'll say it one more time. Do not get this warm and fuzzy feeling by calling something a liquid leader because it acts well for a couple months. It's not. That's very bad to be doing that. Now, that's not the whole story that happened in semiconductors today, and I can't really explain this. But it doesn't matter that I can't really explain this, but I just talked about small caps and micro caps showing relative strength right now. Oh, sorry. Let me move this to this so that you could see the whole screen. I apologize. Look at this stuff that's going up right now. LAES, small cap semiconductor. Look at this stock up 24% today. Right. This is another one. This is highly speculative stuff. Poet was up 7% today. Another name too that I have is INDI. Right, these are look at this name is up 18% today. Right, this is a $5 stock today, but it's also a semiconductor. NVTS, which I've gone over and sent out a trade idea about this on Friday. NVTS semiconductor up 26% today. Now they had specific news. They got a contract, but by the point that I'm making here, and here's another one that I got long today. We saw some calls that went out pretty far in distance. Not Rocket Labs. What's the SKYT? Right now, this did not break the flag, but I'm kind of thinking that this breaks higher. This is Sky Water Technology, SKYT. But again, like I'm not saying that. First of all, I'm not giving out any recommendations or telling anybody what to do. But all I'm saying is try to be observant. about these things. And I've also talked about having tunnel vision too. Be careful if you're only watching a couple names that you think are favorite names, right? When there's rotation for whatever reason into other areas of the market, right? It really helps to have an eye on the tape. Option activity helps for that. Looking at some of the bigger movers for the day helps to spot some of these names. But right now we're in a different market. The market likes small caps. It likes some of these different names. It just feels like there's more. The market feels like there's more return versus risk in some of these names right now. Right? It's always about risk to return. So this is what the market likes right now in the semiconductors. And I want to show one other thing here. Here's the SMH ETF, right, which is a market cap weighted ETF, which is testing the 20-day moving average, right? And here's XSD. This is the equally weighted ETF. I don't think that there's a small cap semiconductor ETF out there. I looked, I didn't see one. I think that's too specific. There's a small cap tech fund, but there's not a small cap semiconductor. But if there was, I would be very interested to see how much that would be outperforming. You could always do this too. See XSD versus SMH, right? And look at the outperformance the last couple days. And actually, besides this move back, you could see that small caps have been outperforming quite nicely since the beginning of August. Smaller cap semis versus larger cap semis. All I'm doing is taking the equally weighted ETF over the market cap weighted ETF. Again, I don't have a small cap semiconductor ETF. So all I'm doing, and this is what I try to do in these videos, and I hope it's helpful, is I'm just trying to tell you what I'm observing and where there's strength in this market versus where there's not. Right. And I thought this for a while that CRDO could not turn the corner. And same thing with ALAB. And I said, hey, I've been watching these. I've had these on my watch list, but these two names just could not turn the corner. Right. Every time this thing tried to go higher, it seemed to just get rejected. All right. So next group. Right. And I've talked about this before, but I think this is one of the biggest things that's going on right now. PBW is up 3.2%. Since we've heard about all these deals and there's been an awakening about how much power is going to be needed to generate, right? I know like Zero Hedge has been talking about this, that the math doesn't add up in terms of if you're going to spend this much on AI and the capacity, you don't have the power out there to be doing it. Hence, this is why all the uranium names have been going crazy. But it's not just the uranium names. And one other thing before I go to the next group, there's too much of this going on right now where people are saying, well, Oklo doesn't make any money, right? They're not even in the business. Well, yes, that's true and that's logical, but you have to think about the road ahead. And this is where some people struggle with these concepts, right? The market is always thinking ahead. It is not thinking about what Oklo is currently generating in revenues. It's thinking about where it's going, where the market is going. And even though they're not making any revenue, they're being set up, right? They're signing contracts, right? The administration wants to increase nuclear power, right? And that's the same thing. I took a position in BTU today, right? I thought this was nice consolidation and moved higher. So this was a nice trade for me today in BTU, which also saw some call activity. But they're going to access. The administration mentions that they're going to access coal alternatives. Other things that are getting a lot of attention. LAC is still going up. Right, this lithium. So right now, not only do you have the AI theme, but now you have the China overhang, where it's a mad scramble for resources because everyone is fighting for this to increase their AI capabilities, and there's only so many resources to go around. So there's scarcity, and hence that's why these things are going up. Plus, anything that's a possibility to increase to make energy more efficient. That's the major theme that's going on right now in this market. Hence BE, which made a new closing high today, right? And it's gone up like crazy. And I'm long this name. I think that the reason why is just because they're going to be called on as well as many other companies, either by the administration or by some of what they call the multi-scalers. I hate that term, but they may be going out to them and saying, hey, I'm going to need to, and in order to accomplish this, I'm going to need more efficient energy. Hence, you're seeing this all over the place. And call activity in just a huge amount of names, anything to do with minerals, energy, is catching a big lift. A lot of this market with the clean energy reminds me of what we saw in 2021. This is the global energy ETF, right? And I've talked about this now for weeks. This is not something new. I've just said that nobody was noticing it a couple weeks ago. But I mean, this is some powerful stuff. One chart I would keep an eye on is LEU. Notice, and again, look at how this is extended on the weekly chart. On the daily chart, it has not been able to get away from this VPOC, and it's sitting right on the 5-day moving average. So if you think this trend is going to continue and all this stuff, I kind of like where LEU is now, and you know where your stop should be, which should be right below the 5-day moving average. All right, a couple other names that I wanted to go over. There's a lot. Look at this name. There's so many of these names at this point that are seeing option activity. Here's TE. All right. There's another name too. Just bear with me a minute. I put all of these. Oh, let me go over. Yeah, T. Oh, I don't have it in front of me. So let me go on. I had a few other names, but I'm going to talk about GEV for a second, which I got long yesterday too. These power generation companies, I would think, are going to start breaking higher, but not yet. This still has to break through 645. This did, and I saw this lingering yesterday. This did take out this VPOC here, right, which is right at 656. So we'll continue to kind of keep an eye on this one. I have a small position in GEV. Why do I not have a large position in GEV? Because it's too loose right now. It's, look at what it did today, for example. Right? It traded all the way down to basically my stop price, which was right around 620, and it managed to stay above there. But that's a big range, 618, all the way up to 657. Right? The only way that I can kind of stick in something like this that's being erratic and all over the place, because look at it 2 days ago. Now it didn't break down, but again, this is a big range. Right? But this value area is about 7% wide, which is pretty decent. Is just to have a small position, it's just so that you can kind of chill out, right? And that's kind of, I'm not going to go through. I could go through another like 15 tickers of small alternative energy type names, but I would rather just kind of give the message of I think what to do best in this market, right? And I'm long a little bit of Tesla too, because I think Tesla is right in the wheelhouse. They, besides autos, right, of what they produce in energy and what they're going to be able to produce. I think they're one of the smartest companies for that, but it may just take some time before this thing could break outside of that value area, which is about 5% above. Now, this is erratic. This is also, I don't want to call, maybe erratic is being too dramatic, but this is not this is not an easy name to kind of sit with on a day-to-day basis in your trading account. In a long-term account, it's fine because you're not looking at it. But the best way I think to position in some of this stuff that's not behaving the way that you want it to is just with a smaller position, and then you have an alert, and then you add to the position once it finally makes the move that you're looking for towards the end of the day. Right? GEV twice looked good intraday, but didn't do what it needed to do by the end of the day. So I'll leave it there, guys. I think this is a fascinating market, but I think there's also some landmines that we're dealing with headlines and with what's going on with China. I think the other thing to think about too is all this mad scramble for all these resources. You also have to be careful of this. If they make some type of agreement come the end of the month, right? What do you think is going to happen to some of these resource stocks and the rare earth stocks? They're probably going to come down decently if there's some type of agreement where more supply comes online. All right. So some different things to think about right now in this market. Regardless, there's a lot of good day trading setups with the way that some of these names are moving every day. Guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.